Hey everyone, welcome to Investing for Generational Wealth. My name is Keshav Kolor, and I'm the co-founder and principal of Clive Capital, where we help primarily tech employees, but other high earners as well, just like you, invest outside the stock market to passively achieve long-term wealth generation through superior risk-adjusted returns, long-term passive income, and tax benefits. We've helped our investors passively invest into over 1,000 apartments under renovation so far and 500 single-family rental homes. Soon, we'll be expanding into other asset classes as well, including industrial real estate, oil and gas, and more. And the goal is to build a private equity investment portfolio for you that has 10, 20, 30 investments paying you every month, no matter where you are, whether you're working or not, true passive income and generational wealth. And we like to work with a lot of folks like Mike Deaton in the industry. But, well, actually, before I get ahead of myself, before we begin, a quick disclaimer. We are not financial advisors. All investments are subject to risks, including the possible loss of the money you invest. So perform your due diligence before making any financial decisions, and of course, consult your CPA and your attorney before beginning investments. My friend Mike and I, we just like to dress up and talk about investments. That's it. We're nothing more. This is purely educational. Welcome to today's episode, Land Flipping / Land Investing with Mike Deaton. Welcome, Mike.
Keshav, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to talk a little bit investing in real estate and specifically land investing.
Yeah, definitely. We're excited to get into it. Could you start us off and just tell us about your journey? Wherever you choose to, I guess, yeah, let's from the very beginning. Were you always in real estate? Did you have a corporate career before? And then just walk us through your journey so far and where you are today.
Happily, yeah. So no, I came to real estate late in life. I talked to so many people, unlike yourself, that wish they got into real estate earlier. One of those, I wish I would have found it earlier, but I found it when I did, and it's served me well. Um, I grew up in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I went to university at TCU, the local Fort Worth college. I got out of university and I went right into the workforce. I got into tech companies actually when I started. So I'm an old timer. So when I got out of university, Motorola was one of the biggest U.S. tech companies around, and I found a job with them. Worked for quite a few years, maybe 5 years or so. I got a transfer to Nokia mobile phones, who at that time, back in 99, 2000, they were kind of king of the mobile phone industry worldwide, but also in the US. And then I don't remember what year, but after a long time with Nokia mobile phones, Microsoft and Nokia formed a partnership in the handset area, and I became a Microsoft employee as part of that acquisition, and spent the last maybe 5 or 6 years of my W-2 and corporate career with Microsoft. So worked for tech companies, climbed the corporate ladder, got to see the world. I worked primarily in supply chain and operations, so I was a lot on the hardware side of things, manufacturing hardware, reverse logistics, so handling defective or returned product, in that side of the world. In 2016, after dodging dozens of layoffs that happen routinely in kind of the tech industry, I found myself on the other side of the table, getting my pink slip and being let go. And it wasn't a total surprise. I mean, I had had conversations with my boss. I was living in Dallas. Microsoft's based in, Washington. Any type of career I was going to have was really dependent on me moving and transferring. And I really wasn't willing to do that. And so it was a bit more of a voluntary leave. So I had a little bit of time to prepare. But regardless, when that moment comes, it still just sucks the wind out of you. I mean, my wife also, Lygia, she was let go from she was at a healthcare company and she was let go, literally within days of each other. We kind of both found ourselves out of work. And those were our only sources of income. We relied on our paychecks to fund our lives. And like most people, we were pretty much only in our 401ks. And automatically drafting money out every paycheck and investing in a portfolio of stocks. And so, in that moment, it was really unnerving to be without a paycheck. Now, we were somewhat responsible. I mean, we had money in the bank. I got a really decent severance because I had a long seniority that had bridged from Nokia to Microsoft. So I got a really nice severance package. And so we had a bit of a cushion, but it's still unsettling. I mean, we had two adult daughters that were um, one was going into university, one a couple years behind her. I had money set aside really to pay for most of that already, so that was kind of good. But that moment for us, while it was unnerving, we did rely on each other, and we took a moment to pause and think about kind of what did we want out of life, because my immediate reaction was to start interviewing and get another job, and I did in fact work my network. I had interviews with Tesla and Apple and Amazon, and there were promising positions out there, but they all were going to require a relocation. They all were going to require me going to a company. I had no idea what the culture was like, how much business travel. I was already traveling 25 to 50% of each month just because I had a regional team all across the Americas. And I was part of a global team. So we met once a quarter. I mean, it was just kind of a lifestyle that was lucrative, but it wasn't really nurturing me or my family. And so, we were fortunate enough to take a moment to pause and reflect on what we wanted out of our lives. And it was to spend more time together. It was to, I don't want to say retire at that moment, but it was to live a life of adventure, to be able to see the world, to be able to go do the things we wanted to do, to really be, I would say, in control of our own time, location, and choices. And so for us, we decided that we wanted to do something entrepreneurial. Real estate called to us. I think when you and I spoke last on our podcast, we talked about Kiyosaki and Rich Dad Poor Dad and the impact that it's made on so many people. Well, I had also recently, at that moment, been revisiting some of his books, and I had it in my mind that I wanted to get somehow into cash flow. Real estate was attractive. My father, most of my youth, had been in real estate in some fashion. He was a general contractor. He built single family homes. He did really well, and so I was familiar a little bit with real estate as an industry. And so we listening and doing some education on podcasts and webinars such as this, trying to improve our own understanding of how to go about it, had come across a couple of different episodes of people that were doing what they call land flipping. And in those episodes, they were talking about just these incredible return on the investment that they made in land. And it really intrigued me enough to purchase a small educational package. And I hadn't looked through it. I had done this while I was a full-time employee, but I was a full-time employee. And so I really wasn't investing a whole lot of time in looking at a side hustle or anything like that. And so we decided to give that a try. We plugged into a network and a community of other like-minded and people that were doing land flipping. We found a coach and a mentor, and that was really our foray into real estate. And we were skeptical. It was kind of a little known, and still is a little known niche in real estate. So we gave ourselves a time frame. We gave ourselves a budget of seed capital, and it worked. I mean, we applied ourselves. We went all in, and we grew it into a really healthy business. I mean, our first step was to pay our bills, and we got to a point to where we were paying our bills. Our next step was we got to where we had replaced the income that we were making at our jobs. And, then we even went beyond that. And we've since diversified, and we can talk about it if you want, into some other commercial assets, just really to one, diversify, but also to enjoy some depreciable benefits like you get with the passive losses from commercial real estate. But land has been great for us, and it was our first entry into real estate. It's still our bread and butter today. We try other things like flipping houses, rentals, syndications. They are all stressful. They carry more risk than land and make kind of less money. And so we find ourselves going back the land just over, not going back, but just focusing more on land over and over again. So but that's a bit of my background, my history, how I got into real estate, and a little teaser into what we're doing today.
That's quite the journey. Okay, so let's get into investing into land. So what does your strategy look like? Like walk us through, I guess, what you learned back then, and I don't know if you've made any changes along the way, but how your strategy's evolved over the years.
Yeah, sure. So land flipping itself is really, it's a very elegantly simple model. You buy land under market value and you simply resell it at or above market value if you can. And so there's a baked in profit. If you, as long as you do your analysis within reason, you know you're going to make a profit right away. And so, it really comes down to identifying a market or markets, finding, we do off market properties. So we reach out directly to property owners. If you own property somewhere, we would send you a letter or we would text or call and make you an offer, or just at least start a conversation about, hey, Keshav, I see you own some property in New York. Are you willing to, um, potentially sell that? Or we would come at you with an offer and just say, hey, I see you have 5 acres over here. We'd love to make you an offer of 5,000 or whatever the correct formula is. And so, it really comes down to just identifying a market. And, there are better markets than others, and there are some ways to go about identifying those market characteristics. It's not quite as complicated as a multifamily investment. You don't really have to look at, the demographic flows, are rents appreciating and at what level, other competitive forces. I mean, really for us, a healthy market is as simple as going onto some of these. There are sites where people buy and sell property. Zillow's one that most people are familiar with, but there are some land specific sites like land.com, landandfarm.com, landwatch.com. Well, you can kind of go and you can by county or even by submarket, go in and look and see how many properties are for sale. You can sometimes go on county websites and see how many properties have sold in a given time period. And so we like some amount of velocity, right? I don't want to go to a market and see that there's been no sales in the last 18 months. That's not really an attractive market. And so we look for what we call a little bit of a velocity of sale. So there's some turnover. Um, we like a market that has a lot of land. And so wherever people are listening, you can think about there are towns and cities, and they're crowded. There's not a whole lot of developable or vacant land. But you get out into the rural areas, well, there's a lot more properties. And so there are all these pockets everywhere where in a given space, there may be 10,000 landowners that you can approach. And the land investing business is a little bit of a numbers game, right? So we'll reach out to 100 or 500 or 1,000 property owners, and our target is to get 1 or 2% of those people to take our very low offer. And so that's a little bit just finding a good place to go. And when we started, it took us, a good 3 months or so. We tested several different markets before we found one that really seemed fruitful. And then, beyond that, the strategy at its simplest form is, let's say you go into a market and you do some comp analysis on similar type of properties. Let's say 1 acre parcels of vacant land. And your assessment shows that properties have sold on average for about $1,000 an acre. Well, we will then go out and approach property owners in that market and offer them somewhere between 30% to max 50% of the market value. And so you can see, like, really not everybody is happy with that offer. A lot of people will look at that and be insulted. And we get people that respond to us in a not very nice way because we've lowballed their property. But there's 1 or 2 or 3% of people that are open to selling their properties. And there's various reasons for that. A lot of people, they're tired of paying taxes on a piece of property. Maybe they bought something 25 years ago. They had a vision of building a second home or a retirement cabin. That's not going to happen. Maybe they inherited it from a relative and they're just paying taxes on it. They're not even using it. And so, there are different reasons that people are willing to part with properties. The advantage that we give them is we will do it quickly. We'll put cash in their hand. It's a clean transaction. They don't have to rely on kind of marketing it and putting things up for sale. And so, we come with a little bit of our incentives, but that's roughly the strategy of the acquisition side of things. Um, Beyond that, we coach quite a few people how to do this business. And another aspect is really how much capital do you have to work with? This is more of an active business rather than a passive investment, like maybe some listeners will be more familiar with, right? You passively invest in a syndication or a fund or a fund of funds. This is an active business for us. We're out there, engaged in some fashion. We have assistants that help us do some of the more repetitive work. A lot of it's automated, but um, we will when we started out, we were kind of operating in a low purchase price level. We were finding properties that were very inexpensive. We were kind of nervous to put capital of any significance into something, but we quickly figured out that, whether you buy a property for $1,000 or $10,000 or $50,000, the amount of work is pretty much the same across the whole process. And so it was really to our advantage to work our way up into a pocket of appraised value, if you will, and purchase things because it was just a lot more efficient for us to find the properties, to buy the properties, and then to resell the properties. Because if you think about it, like if there's a property for sale that's $1 million, well, your buyer pool is very small for that versus a property that's for sale for 25,000 or something like that. And so we took a little bit of time before we figured out that we had a certain, you know, price band of properties that we like to traffic in that we could turn over really quickly. And one other element in terms of the strategy, I would say broadly in land flipping, you can sell properties kind of in two categories. You can buy a property and flip it for a cash sale. Like if we bought a property for $5,000, we might turn around and sell it for 12 or 15. And somebody would give us cash or have their own financing secured behind the scenes. We're in and out of that deal, no more. Well, the other way to sell it is we do probably 90% of our business, we owner finance that. So if we were selling you a piece of property for $60,000, we might say, hey, we'll self finance this for 60 months for $1,000 a month. And now we have essentially mailbox money coming in where for the next 60 months, somebody's writing us a check or we have a system, they electronically transfer it, but we have money coming into our account every week of the year. And over time, we've stacked up a really nice, we call it a loan book, a book of people that are paying off their properties such that, if we stop working for the rest of the year, we know we're going to get money coming in from the work we've already done. And so for us, that gives us a lot of peace of mind in terms of, being able to set our own schedule. My wife, she's from Europe. We go over there for 4 or 6 weeks every year just to visit her family. And we work a little bit, but we don't have to. I mean, we have money coming in. And so, the bills get paid. And that's a really comforting place for us to be, to know that for the next 5 years, we have a certain amount of money that's going to be coming in, and we can choose to reallocate our time into coaching or to look at other investment classes or to pursue hobbies or things like that. And so, strategically, I would say for the land business, it's really finding the market, finding this price band that you want to work in, and then it's all about making the right offer and buying at the right price.
Got it. Okay. And what is that price band for you?
For us, we like to buy properties between, I would say, $5,000 and $20,000, because what that means for us is we are typically, let's just use a third of the value. We're buying properties at a third of their value. And so then we're selling properties at 15 to 75,000 or so, which is affordable for the marketplace. We do some bigger properties when we find them, and they look attractive to us, and we can get them at the right price. They're just a little bit of a different um, they're a bit of a different animal in that it's really hard. We don't, it's hard for us to find, we like to get our capital back in 10 or 12 months. And so, if we spend $25,000 on a property, well, in 12 months, we have to, somebody between a combination of a down payment and payments, we want that $25,000 to come back. And it's hard to find people that are willing to pay $2,000 a month as a payment on a recreational piece of property or not their primary residence. And if you start getting larger than that, then the deals are even bigger. When we do larger deals, typically we will work with realtors, we'll work on cash terms, or somebody has to have their own financing. Our margin on a percentage basis will be thinner. Like, we won't get 200% return on our investment. We'll take 20% profit margin, but it's going to net out at 100,000 or something like that, right? So it becomes a little bit different once we climb up the ladder, and it took us a while to start to do those kind of things. But for us, buying properties in bulk and on the regular, it's somewhere between that $5,000 and $20,000 range.
And so we had a question come in, how do you buy land under market value and then sell it above market value without adding any value? So my understanding is that you just buy right below market, and then you don't do anything to it at all. You turn around and flip it at market price, maybe even a little higher. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah. So like I mentioned, it's more of a numbers game. So we'll send out 1,000 direct mailers to property owners. And of that 1,000, 10 may take our offer. And that offer will be priced below market value. And then, I mentioned selling at or above market value. The nuance there is, when you're selling for cash, you kind of have to play in the market value. Now, I will say, in land, unlike houses, people aren't necessarily comparing it to the property next door. And so you have a little bit of a variation there. But when we owner finance properties, then we price the land above market value, which is essentially an interest rate, right? So we're getting a 10% interest rate in effect. We typically word it such that we say, the property we're offering you is $50,000 on owner finance terms. If you want to come at us with a cash offer, we'll take 40 or something like that. So we don't, per the terms of the contract, we don't state like we're charging you 9% interest rate on this loan. It just gets messier on the reporting, and you have to do a lot of government and tax reporting on interest earned income and when you charge people interest. And so that's kind of technically how we do that. And when I say above market value, that's kind of what I mean. Is like, we'll usually offer an owner financed property more than if you would come at us with a cash offer.
Got it. Okay. So what are your recommendations for finding deals undervalued? Is it really just kind of pure volume, getting your reps in, just sending as many mailers out as possible? Once you've identified your criteria, is it kind of like a spray and pray, or is there more nuance to that?
There's a little bit of nuance in there. I mean, I'm a very process logical and structured person. And so um, that 1 to 3% take rate is really what I key on. And so we'll come into it. We go into new markets once every 2 or 3 months. We'll usually try to find, explore a new market. Um, and when we do that, we'll go in and we'll say, okay, let's send out 300 or 400 offers, or maybe we'll do 1,000 offers. And within that 1,000, we'll have 3 or 4 different sets of pricing that are not wildly different, but marginally different, and kind of a little bit different bands. Maybe some are a third of market value, some are 40% market value, some are 50. And so we'll gauge based on that what our response rate is to get a feel for how that market is. And so that's a little bit more the nuance, but in general, it is, as you mentioned, a spray and pray. I mean, it's really a numbers game, and it works out in most markets. There are some markets we're in where we can tell the response rate percentage is going down, and we'll kind of pause on that market or move to a different area. Just, we don't we like to there. There are different metrics we look at in our business, and cost per lead or cost per acquisition is one that we look at. And so if our cost per acquisition starts to climb to a level that we're not comfortable with, then we'll pivot over into a different area and look. But there's so much land in the US that very rarely does that happen. But by and large, it's a numbers game, but there's some nuance within that.
And a typical range of market value that you are putting offers in, that's anywhere from what, 20 to 50% you said of the land's market value?
That's what our offers are. Yeah, our offers relative
Offers.
to that market value. The market value that we go after is probably 75 to $100,000 at a max, because we're then coming in at an offer of 50 or $40,000, and that starts to get, more capital than we want to deploy at once on one deal.
Okay. And I guess the difference between your strategy here and wholesaling is that your strategy involves cash, whereas I feel like my understanding of wholesaling, at least, is that you're not putting cash down, it's you really assigning contract to someone else. Is that right?
Like in the house flipping market.
In the house flipping market, yeah.
Yeah, there are some strategies like that. You can do similar things in land. We don't typically do that. We like it to keep it clean. We have the capital, so we will buy the property and then just resell it. And I mean, we sell things within weeks, like, 1 or 2 months is typically, I would say, an average or even a high average of how long we keep things. Things turn pretty quickly. But there are other ways. I mean, like I said, we coach many clients, and a lot of them don't have access to a lot of capital. And so there are ways, just like in the house flipping model, where you can secure a property under a purchase agreement or a purchase option, go off and try to find a buyer, and then, work on either a very tight window or even an overlapping window where you don't have to come out of pocket. There's also, similar to all these industries, there are different funding mechanisms. There are people that will short fund properties if you have a deal like that where you're, hey, I need cash for a few days to close this deal, got a buyer lined up. But there are people that'll come in and do that. There's hard money lenders that will come in, just like on the house business, and charge 10, 12, maybe 15% interest to support a shorter term land deal. There's land specific lenders that like to partner with land deals because they're super lucrative and they're quick turning. And so they'll either JV or they'll just lend the money. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to come about it, but that is, something a lot of people that get into the land business either don't want to use their capital, or, I mean, other people's money is the mantra in a lot of real estate industries. And so they're just like in the other ones, there are ways to do it here.
Got it. Question that came, how do you learn the nuance of a new market, things like protected wildlife?
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
those are great questions. Typically, when we go into a new market, we will take a little bit of time to explore things like that. We'll get a feel for, um, is there national land around there? BLM, Bureau of Land Management, owns a lot of properties, especially where we shop here in Colorado, some of the Southwest. Those are, I mean, they're pretty easy to identify on the county websites. A lot of them all have mapping services for the county so that you can see where all the properties are, dial into who the owners are. And so you can see, they'll mark what public lands are, privately owned lands. Um, Related to that question, we will often get a feel for the regulations within a county. Do they allow people to camp on their property? If so, for how long? Is it overly bureaucratic? Because a lot of people that are interested in buying properties, they want to know things like that, right? They'll call up and they'll say, "Hey, can I park an RV on my land? How long can I camp? Can I build? Are there restrictions or regulations?" Similar to suburbia, there are landowner associations, LOAs. There are some land is in homeowners associations, HOAs. And so there can be covenants and restrictions. And so we'll take a little bit of time, not a whole lot, because a lot of that we put back on anybody that wants to buy property, especially vacant land. There's so much you can do with it. There's only so much that we can know. Like I can't know everything that people know to do. So we'll usually refer them to the county planning and zoning or the county assessor or things like that. But um, public lands can be a big benefit. A lot of people love it if land borders public land. I mean, you can actually get a premium for that because there's no private land behind them, or maybe they can hunt on it if they want to, or things like that. So a lot of ways to work that as an advantage.
Got it. And what kind of land are you buying? Is it residential vacant lots? Is it zoned something else? Do you not really look at zoning when you're buying lots?
We personally look at residential, recreational, and or they call it residential rural land. And so we're kind of in the residential space, but you can do it with commercial very easily. I mean, a lot of people I know do that. It's a great strategy if you find commercially zoned properties in certain areas. There are more sophisticated strategies that you can go about and rezone a property if it's in the right area. You can, they call this entitlements, where you're adding certain classifications or zoning or regulations to a property. Well, it increases the value. I mean, that's a value add strategy, similar as you would find in multifamily or other property, other asset classes. You can buy larger parcels and subdivide them many times. If you buy 100 acres, you can do it into, 10 acre parcels and or 25 acre parcels. We have some friends that's their primary strategy. They're shopping for uh, 50 acre parcels outside of Houston or Austin or something, and they're subdividing it, and then they're selling that to developers. Those are more value add strategies. You can go further. You can go horizontal development and rough in roads or put in sewage or bring utilities out to a property and really increase the value. Or you can go vertical and actually do the development, yourself or with a partner. And so, there's a lot of flexibility in it. For us, it's so low stress and pretty easy just to do the flipping model the way we do it, that we have yet to feel the need to do anything like that. I mean, we have explored it a couple of times, but it just adds complexity, it adds risk. You're putting more money into something that you're not 100% sure you're going to get back out. And so we don't typically do that. But yeah, I mean, there are a lot of strategies in that way. And I guess I kind of wandered off your question, but we tend to just stay in this residential area. But you can work the zoning any way you want to. I mean, we have a client right now who's a commercial broker, and he wants to add land into his portfolio. So he's, using this strategy to go after commercial lots and resell them to developers or hang on to them for a little bit of appreciation.
Interesting. And you mentioned that you're buying land for between five to $20,000
Yeah,
per
on average.
parcel.
Yeah.
What is your return? What's your ROI look like on average over like the 8 years that you've been doing this now?
Yeah. So our average annual return on investment is over 150%. So we we on almost every deal will double our money. Uh, and that happens typically within weeks. So, we buy a property, we'll sell it in 4 weeks, maybe 8 weeks. It's rare that we hold one for many, many months. And so, our if I were to really do the math and annualize that out, right, and you're getting a 100% ROI in 2 months times six annualized, I mean, it's really large. But a lot of what we'll do also, as I mentioned, is owner financing. And so sometimes that pulls down the annualized ROI, but even that is still triple digits typically. And so, it's just the nature of how we're buying the properties. We don't usually buy a property for more than 50% of what we estimate its value to be. And so we're doubling our money when we sell it.
Impressive. Okay. You do this with your own capital, or do you accept OPM, other people's money as well?
We have exclusively used our own capital. As I mentioned, when we started out, we set aside a seed money to start our business. And it's worked out such that the money we make, we feed back into our business. We take a small salary, but we kind of put it all back into the business, and we've never had to go into other people's money. A lot of our clients do use other people's money. They will partner with friends and family and offer them 15%. on a deal, or they'll JV with them and do like a 70-30 split. Some people do 50-50. I mean, there's because the margins are so big, you can really play it however you want to so that everybody wins. It's super low risk. I mean, we have in our land business, in 8 years that we've been doing it, we have never lost money on a deal. I can't say the same for some of our commercial real estate ventures, right? I mean, we've unfortunately taken some hits, and so it's a great way to use other people's money. We just haven't ever had to do it. We talk about it probably in 2025. We will. We're pushing the boundaries of some bigger and bigger deals, and I just don't want to tie up all of our capital into six-figure deals that we could then be using on other things. And so, if I can get a hard money lender for 12% or 15%, or if I can do a 70-30 split JV with somebody who just wants to put up the capital, then it's a kind of a no-brainer.
Okay.
But it's
I
not,
know we're talking
I will say, sorry, it's not, it's not like probably most of the speakers you have that come in with, a multifamily deal or an oil and gas deal where you can take your retirement money, invest it into something, and it's a SEC governed investment. So it's really not like a niche where you can do too much passive investing. There are people that set up their own hard money lending companies or firms, and they'll do it that way. Um, you were just recently on our podcast, the Cash Flow Fight Club podcast, just a quick little pitch. But the episode we dropped today featured a guy, Brad Warren. Well, he has a company that does take passive investments into, you're essentially buying your own land. It's in and around the Los Angeles area only, but his company goes off and does research on where are the paths of growth, where are solar farms looking to buy, where are commercial development properties looking to go, and they'll kind of secure this property and then allow you to buy $25,000 investment or a $100,000 investment. That's a pure passive investment play. But you're actually buying an asset. You're banking on some form of appreciation to happen over 7, maybe 10 years. And then, energy company is going to come knock at your door and say, hey, we're wanting to put a solar farm here. We're willing to buy your property for X, Y, and Z. That's a little bit more on the passive side of things and might be worth, I'll send you Brad's contact information. Might be an interesting guest for you to have on your show. But yeah, ours is a bit more active in that way, but it's a great way to use other people's money.
Is there anything, I guess, so your model works well just with your own capital. Is there anything preventing you from taking on other people's capital? Is it one that maybe there's not enough deal flow to meet that capital's needs, or is it just more work to deal with, SEC lawyers and syndications, all of that? Like, why not just start expanding to accept other people's money and really scale your land flipping business?
It's a lot of, so I'm not sure how familiar you are. You might be, but um, it becomes complicated when you bring other people's money in. So like if you do a JV, it's a little bit easier because you can make an arrangement with a small number of people. You can agree the terms and conditions. Um, Once you start taking investors' money, I'm not sure where kind of the transition point would be. But even just setting up a 506C or B deal, getting the PPMs and the legal work, that's a lot. It's a big investment. And so, I mean, I've been involved as a lead sponsor on a few multifamily deals, and legal fees are a significant cost as part of that, as well as compliance and all the reporting. And so, it's really, unless you're probably doing a 7-figure land deal, it would be hard to go that route where you're taking SEC type investments in outside of some other kind of partnership. It could be that you could set up a fund or a fund of funds where you're maybe investing in multiple properties, and in aggregate, they could be reaching that threshold. It would just be overly complicated. We've just never had to do it. It's not limited us in any way. There's plenty of financing methods out there should we need it. It's just not been really necessary for the size of deals that we're doing. So
Okay. Yeah, those last 5 minutes were me being selfish as a fund manager to look for other investment opportunities because, yeah, I mean, we typically, as you know, and we talked on your show, we're doing 15 to 25% on our deals. But
Mhm.
I mean, 100% for our investors passively, but 100% on one deal, sounds pretty good. So
Yeah,
as a
on a
fund,
percentage basis, it sounds great. But that's a,
yeah,
relative to a multifamily deal where you're buying a property for $5 million or $15 million or more, we're talking $50,000 or maybe six figures. It's just and once you get to $100,000 or more, your ROIs, I mean, you're not going to find somebody that owns a property valued at $500,000 that's willing to sell it for $250,000 or less. Or very rarely would you be able to do it, not at the volume that we do on the other properties. So people that, once your property is that much, you're going to employ a realtor. You're going to put it at market value. You're maybe going to take a 10% cut on it or something. And so it just becomes harder to find those kind of deals. But as I was saying earlier, I mean, if you're buying $1 million property, if somebody's willing to come off 10% and you're able to make 100K, well, that's a different animal. So you're netting out a good profit, even you're getting just a smaller margin on it.
yeah. Well, yeah, I understand the part about the 100% return on smaller deals, but I guess
Yep.
that's like you said, where the fund concept comes in, where you could start a fund and to fund, 50 or 100 of these deals where
Right.
the legal cost is minimal.
Yep. That
Yeah.
could be a strategy. You'd have to have a pretty good machine out there doing that to bring in some investors at that level, but it could be done. Something to think about, man.
Let me know when you spin it up.
Will do.
Yeah. Cool. Well, now that I'm done being selfish, let's see. So, land.com connects you directly to real estate agents as opposed to owners of the land. How do you reach out to, hundreds, if not thousands of landowners directly? Is there a platform? Like, how do you go about getting the contact information, phone
Mhm.
addresses, email addresses, the home addresses of the landowners?
Yeah. So, in our country, the real landowner is the U.S. government of all property, right? So we lease it from the government through taxes, and the all the counties have tax assessor collectors, and they know exactly who owns every parcel of property in their county, and so they're the ultimate source of record for who owns properties. Many times we'll go to the counties directly, and as they get more and more sophisticated, a lot of them have digital, you can download records, but that's still, there's really, I've only found a few counties where I can go to that level of interaction with them. But there are third party service providers that aggregate all that information. So Data Tree is one that serves not just land, it serves all realtors and real estate. I mean, a lot of people use that for finding homeowners that they, send your yellow letters to, or different things there. There are many others. PropStream is one, but you can usually, for a monthly service fee or a per record, like maybe 10 cents a record, they will allow you to go in, mine their data, and extract exactly how you want. So many of the things that I've talked about here, I'll go in and do, or direct someone to. I'll say, okay, we're looking for vacant landowners, residential. I want a certain size. I don't want uh, zero point 0.1 acre or less, because that is just kind of a noise for me. I want a little bigger property, maybe max 100 acres, assessed value of this. Sometimes I'll go target out of state owners. So like if there's a piece of property and the owner's out of state, then I can think, okay, maybe they're more open to sell their property because they're just not invested in it physically, or different things. And so you can go and extract that data, and then there are either those same service providers, but in most cases, a separate service provider. You can connect and send them that data, and they will send out mailers on your behalf. And so they just do it in bulk. When we started our business, we were doing it by hand. We had some macros and programs on our computer that printed out on our printer letters. We folded them, stuffed them in envelopes, licked stamps, put them on, and we did, I don't know, 20 or 50 of those a week. And that's kind of how we got started. But now everything's pretty much automated for us. And that's really how we go about doing things in bulk. There are other ways to do it. There are services that will cold call. If you just say, hey, in Lee County, I want to reach out to these owners. Well, they'll just start calling people. They'll find phone numbers of people, call on your behalf, and you pay for leads. They'll give you leads for 50, excuse me, $50 or $75. Um, there are text-based platforms now starting to merge with AI. I have a guy who started his land business about the same time we did. We just got through beta testing. He's putting a service together where, he has AI agents that text with landowners. They find records for people. They text, and then when somebody shows interest, the lead gets passed on, and it's the same kind of a thing. You pay on a per lead basis. And so there's other ways to go about it. It's just a question a lot of times of preference. The way we do it, when we send somebody an offer, they already know, and if they've responded, they know we are willing to pay a certain amount of property, a certain amount for their property. The other ways are a little more open. It's a lot more negotiation intensive. You may call somebody and they were like, hey, yeah, somebody reached out and I'm interested to sell my land, and they want $100,000 for it, and you're willing to pay 10. And so there's a lot of wasted time on the negotiation side in that. But some people like to negotiate. I have other colleagues in the business that's what they love to do. They love to get people on the phone, form a relationship, have a negotiation back and forth. I'm more about just deal flow and getting things going. But a lot of different ways to come out and reach owners. But ultimately, it comes down to the county records, who owns that property, finding the contact information. The counties all have addresses available, but finding the phone numbers and email addresses is a little more challenging. But in this world of big data today, it's getting easier and easier to uh, get a hold of people, for better or for worse.
Okay, last question before we get into some of our closing out questions. What does your team look like? I'm assuming it was just you and Lygia when you started out. How did you guys build the team? What pieces did you put in what places along the way, and where are you today?
Yeah, great question. I mean, our operation is still incredibly lean. We do, I don't know, 80% of everything. We automate what we can. I like to be hands-on the data. I like to see the numbers. I like to understand what we're going to offer, and those kind of things. When we explore a new market, it takes a few hours, maybe 5 hours to comb through some data, to run some statistics, to look at different price points and come up with what we think our offers are. Um, Lygia does a lot of the personal interaction. She'll talk to buyers and sellers. But we leverage assistants, virtual assistants, usually on a transactional basis or an hourly type basis. And so, we have a dozen of those that we can tap into, and we do them as needed um, along the way. And so it's a super minimal outlay of any overhead type capital. Other things that we regularly tap into would be like realtors. When we sell properties, we don't always use realtors, but maybe 20% of the time we'll list with a realtor if it's a bigger property, or if we want cash, for sure. Then most people that work with a realtor have their own financing ready, or something there. If it's a new market, a lot of times we'll tap into realtors to help. They'll give us a lot of intelligence on a lot of the information we talked about. They know what you can do on your property, what you can't do on your property. They know the market comps. They're happy to feed you the market values. Um, and so those are great relationships to have. Um, our process, largely, we take care of the title transaction ourselves. So we'll work with counties. There's a third-party system where you can digitally record deeds with almost every county in the United States. But sometimes for bigger value deals, for peace of mind, we'll go through a title company. They'll do all the title research. They'll put insurance on it. They'll take care of the escrow, for which a lot of buyers or sellers, sometimes they're a little squirrely on. They want a third party holding the money just to make sure everything's on the up and up. And so those are probably some of our more consistent resources. But um, a lot of when we sell a property, we do a lot of marketing on social media. We use Facebook Marketplace, we use Craigslist, Zillow. There are paid sites that we use sometimes. But it's helpful, just like in other businesses, you can use assistants to do that work, right? They can go into your account, do the posting, do initial responses with people when they direct message or things like that. And so it's a time saver in a lot of that way. But I mean, it's a very lean operation. It's we have two of us, and so we're able to spread a little bit of the workload there. But there's not more than one or two people active at any given time in our business,
Okay.
besides ourselves.
With that, yeah, we do have a few more questions, but we'll provide Mike's contact information here. But before that, we're going to get to the end of the interview questions that we always like to ask.
Uh-oh.
So, Mike, describe some failures that you had along the way, specifically in land flipping, and what you learned from them.
Okay. Not too many gotchas in the land business. I would say if you're doing your comp analysis decent, there's the margins are so big, even that there's a lot of room for variation. But some of I would say the maybe two biggest things to look out for that we look at as red flags is accessibility. So we have bought some properties in the past that didn't have legal access. They were what we call landlocked. There's no road coming to them. There wasn't an easement going through somebody else's property. And we overlooked that in our early, sometimes we buy a property and we didn't do a complete due diligence on it. And that was something that hit us a couple of times. And unfortunately, in the land business, there's a wholesale market. Like there are people that buy in bulk and they'll sell somewhere in the middle of what we would buy for and what we would sell for. And so there's this wholesale. And so sometimes those wholesalers can be a little sketchy. Um, and so always do your due diligence. The other thing that is critical is really just the chain of title, just making sure that all the transactions that have happened before the owner that you're buying it from have been clean or well documented, and it's fairly easy to do yourself. There are abstractors that will do the work that you can contract out. And then if you go enlist a title company, the title company will for sure. I mean, that's their primary job is to go through and analyze and make sure there's no liens on a property. Back taxes are clear and the chain of title is good. But I would say those are probably the two biggest things that we look for beyond any, if somebody reaches out for it, that's a first pass thing that we're going to check before we even engage with somebody.
Okay. So the land flipping business sounds great, right? You buy a property, $5,000 to $20,000 land, $5,000 to $20,000. If you buy it right in the right markets with the right buy box, you can turn around, sell it, get a 100% ROI, if not very high double digits.
Mhm.
What's the greatest fallacy that someone should be aware of when they're getting started?
Um,
Like a reality check, I guess, that you think their listeners should know.
Yeah, it is an active business. I mean, it's not a labor intensive business, but there is some work that needs to be done. There's a fair amount of learning, as with anything. You know, I explain it as a simple process. You buy low and you sell it a certain way. But once you get underneath, there's a lot of education that has to happen, as with anything, like with multifamily. There's a language that before you engage, you should understand what return of capital means versus return on capital. There's nuance that needs to be learned. It's not quite as simple. In terms of any fallacies, I would just say, there is some work that has to happen. It's not too intensive, but it's not by any means a passive endeavor.
And lastly, how do you give back to your community?
Well, we have for about the last year and a half, we've been coaching others to do the same, and so that's a very direct way. I talked about my journey a lot when I was in corporate as an executive. Coaching and mentoring others was really what lit me up, and so I really enjoy that. going forward. I do it, on a informal basis. I do it formally through our program. That's so rewarding to me. I mean, we've had several dozen clients come through our program, and watching them transform and find levels of freedom like we enjoy today, it has been super rewarding, and it's our way of giving back.
Okay. And Mike, what's the best way that people can reach out to learn more about you, whether it's just getting in touch, learning about your journey, learning about your coaching program to do kind of what you taught us about in this webinar, flipping dirt?
Yeah.
What's the best way to reach out to you?
So our website is flippingdirt.us. If you go to flippingdirt.us/freedom, that's a landing page that I put together really for this type of situation. People can go there and it's a launch pad into a few different things. We have some ebooks that you can download. I think our coaching program is linked there. If not, it's at the menu at the top. There's just some resources. My contact information is there. You can schedule a call if you want, just various different ways depending on your appetite. So that's probably the best way, flippingdirt.us/freedom.
Okay. Well, with that, that wraps up today's webinar. Thank you very much for a great presentation, Mike.
Yeah, thank you, Kesho. I really enjoy this, and wish you all the best in all your endeavors.
Yeah, thank you. So, to learn more about flipping land flipping, feel free to reach out to Mike at the website that he mentioned. And to learn more, we're going to include that information in the description for this podcast episode as well. And again, Mike, thank you for coming in, taking time out of your busy schedule to come speak to us. For those of you listening at home, don't forget to like and subscribe to our podcast on whatever platform you're listening to make sure that we can continue bringing you the best educational content. Thanks, everyone, and until next time, keep learning to invest for generational wealth.